We are here at the Timbers training facility for the end of the year press conference where Phil Neville sat down with Ned Grabavoy to talk about the disappointing end of the season and what the Timbers are planning on doing in the off season to prepare for next year.
Good morning. Thank you to everyone that's joining here in person and online. I think we can just jump straight into questions.
Hi guys. First big question, gut instinct after that last match. What's the first thing that needs to change?
Well, I think we're all really still disappointed. I think the result on Wednesday night? Yeah, Wednesday night. I think will stick with us all the off-season. I think it was the manner of the defeat. The scoreline obviously is the standout one, but it was the manner of the defeat. We had real high expectations for this match, for this season. And I think I said it after the game, we fell below the expectations of where we wanted to finish and where we wanted to be. And I think straight after the game, I went to Ned's office and the planning starts for next season. I think we've got to attack the off season. We know we need to keep making changes. We know we need to keep improving the culture. We know that we need to keep improving things around here. We said that when I first came is that we've not had success for the last 2 years in terms of getting to the playoffs. This year we've improved, but only slightly and not to the level that we want. And I say we still know that there's still a lot of work to do. And I think I woke up yesterday morning, I woke up this morning excited about the work that we've got to do in the off season to make sure next year that we're challenging.
Hi Ned, after your availability from the secondary transfer window, you spoke about being pleased with the steps you guys have taken in the last year and the alignment with the coaching staff on the bigger picture plan for the club. Following some of Phil's comments on Wednesday night about players quitting on the team and just having a day to process the way the year ended, has that plan shifted at all for you guys? And do you still feel aligned with the coaching staff about what needs to change with the roster?
Yes, absolutely. That alignment continues, stays consistent. And I also do believe, even though there's still a ton of emotion from Wednesday night, certainly was a humbling moment, certainly was a low moment for the club within the season at a very important time, so I can't take away from that emotion. It's probably harder to see some of the positive and incremental steps we've made as a club, but I know that we've had. We had a really important meeting together this morning as a staff to outline some of those positive steps that we've made together and where we need to continue to go and what we need to do to improve the roster and continuing to take the steps to get to where we want to be. So I don't think the plan changes much for us. There's things that we've identified this season and having Phil on board for the first year. There's weaknesses within the group. We need to address those this offseason again and look to strengthen the team. We'll focus on that. It'll be a big part of our offseason together, coaching staff, recruitment team. As Phil said as well, the emotion sometimes it makes things more difficult. But I'm re-energized and excited as well to make these changes with Phil. This will be a really important offseason for us.
It's almost been a year since both of you took to the stage at Providence Park after Phil was hired, and one of the key talking points from there was an emphasis on the academy and bringing players through and other roster mechanisms besides just going out in the international transfer market. Just in both of your opinions, how did T2 do this year, and are any of those players getting close to breaking through into the first team?
Yeah, I'll answer first, but I would like Phil to answer this as well from a coach perspective. Bringing back a second team and sort of what MLS Next Pro now looks like, it's really given us an ability to provide more of a pathway and more opportunity for some of the younger players and even academy players within our club. I'm starting to see signs of that sort of total DNA of academy players being involved on a regular basis within our first team. I think the only conversations we're having right now as a club about a few of the players that are interesting for the first team are players from our academy, not from outside. So I think it's been a real positive to have that team and to have that group to allow those players, one, to develop it, and two, to play matches at a higher level. I think Phil's been tremendous along with a lot of our other staff to have that integration of academy players. The times I do have to look out on the training field, there's academy players in every single training session. I know that we've got conversations around 2 or 3 younger players this offseason about whether it makes sense or not to commit to an MLS contract and really start to have them as a part of a first-team culture.
Yeah, I think you've been at the most training sessions. We've had T2 players with us in every training session. I think they're developing so good. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is the 3rd year for the T2 side. It normally takes 5 years for you to start producing your own players. That conveyor belt is getting closer. I think we've seen this year with, I think Sawyer came on against Dallas, and Adolfo came on against Nashville. That was deliberate. That was a sign, because I think when you work in an academy, you need a pathway. You need something to hang your hat on, and I think that was my message to the academy coaches, to the academy kids, to the T2 players, is that we want to produce young players. And that was a real big incentive when Sawyer and Adolfo went back down to the T2 side, is that we've now got a pathway, that that fence in between the pitch we're going to rip down soon and make sure that there's real synergy between both. We saw some good performances from the T2 boys this year. We saw some inconsistencies from the T2 boys this year, but that's young players in general. And I think in the next 12 months you'll see 2 or 3 of them boys break through to becoming regular, maybe on the bench, breaking through to maybe getting appearances, and that's what this club is wanting to do.
Ned, you had Evander call out the club in a pretty public manner Wednesday night. I'm curious as to what your response was to that, and then also it was reported that there was a contract extension for him on the table. Is that still in play?
Yeah, I found it to be incredibly selfish, if I'm being honest. He's a brilliant player. He's not a bad person, but I think it was poor judgment. That was a difficult night. On Wednesday, there's a lot of emotion, and it was a low point for the club. I'm thinking about the supporters that were in the crowd that came to support. I'm thinking about a lot of players in that locker room who've given their all for the entire season, and some in question even be back with our club. I'm thinking about our staff and our coaching staff and our support staff that show up to this building every day and grind, for the team. I thought there was not a need in that moment to make it about an individual, so I do think it was a lapse in judgment. In terms of the contract situation, we spent a considerable amount of time and effort over the course of 4 months or so. We've continued to try and put a contract in place for Evander that he's happy with and do an extension. We've got an offer in front of him. I think some of the figures have probably been reported as well, to where we have tried to value him as an MVP player. We have. And that's all the way back to the summertime before the season he even played out, because there's been a strong belief in that player since the time we were given the funds to invest in that player and bring him and try to further commit to that player. There was a stage in the season where it was no longer beneficial or healthy to continue those discussions. There was a lot on the line towards the end of the year. There was a focus that needed to be put on the team and on the playoff stretch. And so the communication that's happened with him and his representation was we were going to leave the offseason for the offseason to navigate what the next steps would look like.
Can I just say something? I was incredibly disappointed with that post that got put out, and that's coming from someone that Evander is like my second child. I wanted to sign him in Miami. When I came here, I think I've given him a platform to perform. I think he's delivered on the pitch. I think his performances this year has been incredible. And then when you have a defeat like we had on Wednesday night, the last thing that this club needed was from our DP player to come out and say something publicly like that. It's not right. It affects the culture of the club. It affects everything that we're doing. It undermines everything that we're doing. And I spoke to Evander about that. And there's no bigger fan of that boy than me. But I felt incredibly let down, because what we said at the start of the season is we're building a culture here of togetherness and spirit. And you do not air your dirty laundry in public. That's an English saying. But that, for me, went against everything that we are trying to build at this football club. We've offered him the biggest contract in the club's history. Well, we didn't need to. He's under contract. But we believe in him. We trusted him. That's why the business people at the club, the front office, Ned and the ownership offered him that contract. And to wake up to that, because I went to bed early, to wake up to that, I felt incredibly let down. I think that's really important because we're all together at this football club. We're one. The supporters, the players, and the team. And when we lose together. And that's why I felt incredibly let down. And I'd say that from a point of view is that Evander is like my second child. I think that's important to say.
It's a saying here too, Phil.
Good. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you
English and
understood.
English.
Ned, can you guys still invest in a player who is capable of a selfish moment like that? Is the club as committed to Evander going forward as you were when those contract discussions were underway?
Yeah, I think you've got to take some of the personal aspects out of it. As I said, I don't think he's a bad person. I don't. I think he's got a good heart deep down. I just think it was poor judgment in a moment that it really didn't need to be about one individual. What I would say is my job is to explore every and any opportunity that puts this team in a position to succeed. Certainly there's been some things that have been said, but I have to keep that door, open with the team in mind, with Phil in mind, with what's best for, this team to compete at the highest level. Having said that, I do think there needs to be some level of recognition. I do think there needs to be some level of responsibility. I'm certainly willing to at least, play a part in that as well. But I do think there needs to be accountability in that as well.
Much has been made about the U22 slot that you guys have open and if it was going to be utilized throughout the summer window. Is there a position or part of the team you plan to use that on? And is there any players you have, obviously you're not going to tell me, but like leads on from different parts?
Yeah, well, with the new shift in the roster model for us currently going into next season, having an additional U22 slot, the way in which we'll look to potentially use that is, we will look at in the attack, at potentially a younger forward as well, to provide competition, to give us another quality option. I would also say this is an off season where I believe we're potentially going to have interest in some other players, some players that were U22s now, U22s previously, and so we've got a succession plan potentially to bring in another young player if we lose, one of the bigger assets, within the club. I think looking back to the previous window, even though we didn't use a U22 slot on the player, I believe Finn Sermon has a big upside. I really do. I know it's not a big sample size, but I think having him in the building, getting to know him as a person, seeing what he is on and off the field, looking at some of our weaknesses as a team, he has the ability to strengthen this team next year. He has the ability to compete for minutes as well. I do think we've had success as a club in bringing some of those younger players in during that summer window and then sort of seeing that success, as we've gotten into another full preseason and another season as well. So he's one I know that Phil and the coaching staff have a big belief in as well. We hope he takes the steps forward. There's other additions that we need to make other than just maybe another U22. We need some experience. We need some veteran players. We need some players that are capable of helping the team win now. So we have multiple things that we need to accomplish within the roster as we navigate the offseason.
Good morning. I hate to bring it back to the Evander situation, but so many people on social media after that want changes from the front staff, not only this year but previous years. Are there any changes that you can say we'll be making from the front staff? And how comfortable are you saying that we'll see Evander in the Portland Timbers jersey next year?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I understood the first part of that question because I know it is Evander related, but in terms of what changes were you identifying?
Front staff, any front staff changes?
Okay, just staffing within the club?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have been in the process of looking at a few different areas. The theme for us as a club to continue to evolve, is in and around player support. We are in the final stages of speaking to candidates in a mental performance area. That's a big area that we believe is a part of performance and can help layer in with the rest of the team that we have here. Player care, player engagement, someone to focus full time on, the families of players and how players settle and the needs that players have off the field as well, to put them in the best position to be clear mind and to compete at the highest level on the field is really important as well. Data analysts, While we have been much more data forward, much more objective in our approach than we've ever been as a club, it's really important that we have a full-time data analyst. There has to be a strong connection for that person also into the coaching staff to give them the support that they need as well. That highlights a few areas, in which we'll look to strengthen the club and continue to build out staffing. So I think hopefully I've answered that question.
Thank you.
Ned, there was the implication, I'm sorry to ping pong around on this, but there's probably like 6 questions in one here, but there was the implication that with Evander, there were promises somewhere along the way, maybe dating back to the original signing, that were not kept. Has he expressed to you what promises he may feel haven't been kept along the way, or even what the root of this specific airing of grievances is? Is it just about the money on the contract side? Can you help illuminate what is actually the root of this anger? Because anger is the right word. And then also there was a report of, I don't know if dust up is the right word, or him speaking up against you in the locker room after the game on Wednesday. I would love if you could again illuminate how Wednesday night played out for you.
Yeah, and I'll try to articulate on those, and some of it's is public now as well. And so when bringing Evander here, separate from a contract, there were some things as a club that we were going to try to help put in place. This goes back to player care, player support. Some of it was in and around, in all honesty, visa situations for family members. We've had issues. I ultimately am not an immigration lawyer and don't control some of those things, but we've tried to find some different ways to have more of a network for him in and around him and closer to him. I would also tell you openly and candidly that the player did not receive the amount of money net that he thought he was going to receive in year one. I'm not a tax person. Taxes have the ability to change in this country. We all know that. We felt that it was best to work through those at the end of the year when we had a clear idea of what those amounts were. I worked with him and his representation. There was a $400,000 payment that went in the beginning of the year to make good on some of those things as well. There's some other small things that are also very important to Evander as well. I know that we've given effort on all of these things, and we've tried to rectify any issues that he's potentially had. In terms of where is the anger at, is it through a contract, is it through wanting to be sold? There's some questions that the player's going to also have to answer as well, because it is a mutual commitment. When you do a commitment at this type of level, you're hoping in a DP slot, which is a coveted slot within a team, you're going to have a guy for the next 2 or 3 years that's going to help you win something. So there really is, an importance to all that. In terms of the dust up, strong. I've been in locker rooms for a long time. I would consider that to be beyond minor, very brief. Looking back on it now, it seems pretty clear that the player was probably in a different mindset than maybe some others within that locker room. It was moved on very quickly, but I would consider it to be very minor.
Aside from Evander's contract, there's some other expiring deals this offseason, namely Diego Chara. Just wondering if you could provide some clarity on that situation and if who of those players you guys are looking to maybe bring back.
Yeah, Diego Chara signed an extension with the club. That has happened, in the last month or two. Diego Chara will have a place in this club for as long as he wants to. He's that valuable to our DNA. He's that valuable to the club, and he's still performing at a pretty good level. Now we need to continue to think about how are we putting Diego in the best position to succeed. How much are we asking from him, mentally, emotionally, physically at this stage of his career? But could not speak higher of that individual. That's a no-brainer. He tells me he wants to stay. He tells Phil he wants to stay. He stays. Diego Chara will be back. In terms of some of the other individual conversations that we have to have, we haven't had a chance to meet with players yet. I would, sort of stay away from making anything public before we go through some of the meetings. But what I would say is we're open to looking at a number of things. It's not just the level of players that we have. It's not just the talent of some of the players that we have. We have to also look at how to strengthen the team in some of the areas that we're weak. It may be a player that's of the same level, may just be stronger in certain areas that are important to Phil and the way that the team plays.
We're going to move to questions online. We're going to start with Tom Bogert. Tom, go ahead.
Thank you for taking the time. I was actually about to ask about Diego Chara's situation, but you just kind of cleared that up for us. In a macro sense, looking at this offseason, do you think that this is going to be a super busy time for the Timbers, or is it more about tweaks to the roster? Thank you.
I think it's going to be busy. I think, and there's a number of reasons for that. I think this is a unique offseason for us, and one of the reasons why I'm excited. My time in the club, Tom, we're constantly trying to find ways to sort of move one player just to make space to create, to bring a new player in. I mean, with some of the new roster initiatives and the additional funds that have been greenlighted and the support we have from ownership with that discretionary GAM, we have the ability to go out and add, a few quality players without taking away from the rest of the group. I think it's really important that we do that. I do think, center midfield is a position that we're really focused on, and trying to bring in a top-level player. Obviously, we have the U22 slot that comes with a discretionary spend as well. So we have the support from ownership to do that. We also have the flexibility. And, Tom, I think you're going to see that probably as being a trend league-wide and not just specific to Portland.
All right, we'll move to Sam Spiller.
Hi all, thanks for taking the time to speak. Ned, going into this season, you stated that you believe that this roster has the capacity to consistently compete, make it into the playoffs, kind of be one of those teams that kind of like the upper tier, and as you and Phil kind of referenced, you've fallen short of that this season. What were some of the main factors that you see in why this team didn't achieve, the level that you thought it could, or you believe that it can? And how much responsibility do you think you kind of have as kind of like, the technical director, general manager, to address those problems and kind of take accountability for them? Thanks.
Yeah, well, I'll answer the end part first. All the responsibility. That's my job. That's why I'm sitting up here. So it falls on me, and I'll continue to do that and work with Phil and the coaching staff and others to find any way that we can improve. And we've got the time and the runway to do that. That's already started and begun well before, the letdown on Wednesday night. I think to that question 2 or 3 weeks ago, I probably would have been saying, and most of us probably would have felt that it was a lot closer to maybe where we wanted to be. I think we seem to have hit a little bit of a wall, physically, emotionally, confidence. For a team that looked unbelievably confident for a long stretch of the season, the confidence wasn't there. And a lot of those things go hand in hand. I don't think it was as far away from where we wanted to be, but I think it was a major letdown in the way that the season ended. The conference was really strong. We needed even more points to qualify than we probably would have thought or imagined in terms of our KPIs in the beginning of the year. I think when you look at some of the trends over the last few years, it's areas that we'll focus on as a staff of how to improve. We haven't started the strongest. The season felt different, at least in the first couple of games. But then we went through a long winless stretch, kind of through those first 12 games, whether it was 12 points in 12 games. That makes it a little bit difficult because you've got an uphill battle to climb there. And then I would also say the last few seasons, there's been some real opportunities in the later stages of the season. Last game of the season, obviously the match against Vancouver, home matches against Dallas and Austin, where we just haven't done enough to seize the opportunity and take advantage of it, to put ourselves in a better position. We don't know how the season would have played out if we finished in a different position. We can't go back and change that now, so we have to deal with what we are and who we are, and ultimately at the end of the day, there's probably a lot of teams that are also going through similar press conferences right now and telling themselves if they were 4 points higher, they would have been great. And so everyone's probably saying the same thing. You are what you are at the end of the day. We've got a lot of reflection to do. We'll do that, and we will come back strong.
We'll take one last question.
Último del año, en español. ¿Cuál va a ser el énfasis esta temporada libre para mejorar la defensa?
Sí, es la verdad. Pedimos demasiados goles. es una cosa, es un objetivo muy importante para los técnicos en la pretemporada. Ahora, o esta mañana, vimos todos los goles en nuestro partido. A mí no me gusta, a mí es una área donde tenemos que mejorar y aprender y mejorar en el mismo caso. Si marcamos muchos goles y cuando marcamos muchos goles también pedimos goles también, pero no 61 goles es demasiado. Es una área donde tenemos que mejorar. Y centramos en esto toda la pretemporada y la próxima temporada vamos a mejorar, vamos a jugar mejor y eso es muy importante.
We'll wrap it there. Thank you, Ned.